Welcome to the Always On podcast. I'm your host, Duncan MacPherson. And as you know by now, this podcast is designed to enable our audience, which are high caliber fee-for-service professionals, to always be working on their business and on themselves personally and professionally. And once again, today I had a great conversation with Chris Jepson. Chris is the Chief of Advisory Practices at First Trust. And in this episode, we talked about how to win in volatile market environments. We talked about AI and how real it's getting in the life of an advisory team. We talked about scaling up. We talked about endgame and exit strategy. We talked about leadership. And we closed with the power of the feedback loop. Very in-depth. And hopefully you like it. If you do, please like and share. And of course, tell your colleagues. And if you have any ideas for topics you'd like us to get into down the road, just let us know. Thanks for listening. My guest today needs little introduction. He's among the most respected and definitely the most requested thought leader in the area of practice management and business development in the financial services space. He also happens to be the co-author of these two fine and very popular books. And he heads up a great team at the Advisor Consulting Group at First Trust Portfolios. Chris, welcome back to Always On.
Duncan, it is always good to chat, even though we do it all the time, I guess, with the recording button on.
Yeah, and listen, I'll just tell you, I always get way more from our conversations than I think you do. I appreciate that a great deal, and you're always requested by our audience. So thanks for making time, because I know you're a busy guy.
You know what? It's actually been a good busy. We've been able to, with this, we've always asked for markets like this. Everybody's like, oh, I just can't wait to a little more volatility where I can really be able to show all these processes I put in place and differentiate. Well, we asked for it. So now let's do something with it.
Yeah, well, that's perfect. And for everybody listening in, this is a conversation that stems from the field. Chris and I both have countless interactions with very high caliber financial professionals and their teams. So we want to talk about what's working and what the best are doing to adapt based on the velocity of change, to level up, to seize on some of these opportunities, and to thrive, because that is a mindset, especially in periods of volatility. So Chris, let's start with how to win when it's volatile. As we all know, habit one is be proactive. So of course, the number one thing a top advisory team will do when things start getting a little choppy is they'll drop everything and just start talking to clients. So I'd love you to chime in on that, because there are some advisors who the knee-jerk is to sort of immerse themselves in reading charts and interpreting data, and it's almost like hiding, where instead it's just be proactive, stir the pot, talk to people. So pounce on that if you wouldn't mind.
You know what? It seems that everyone knows that. And even when you tell people, like, this is where we win. This is where we win in a volatile market is really two things. I think in volatile markets, we win by doing two things. We deepen relationships and we value stack. Value stacking is the time where we look at personalized planning. Right now, tangible outcomes. People are worried about the outcomes of volatile markets, not the day-to-day fluctuation of their account value, but how does this impact the outcome that I've discussed? Is that less tangible than it was before? Bring me some comfort around that. And so delivering right now unexpected values, family wealth inclusion, and personalized planning with tangible outcomes. That's that value stacking that we're emphasizing in volatile markets.
Okay, well, that is great. And it's interesting, like early April, very, very busy as you were, and advisors, there were a couple of days there where there was some palpable anxiety. And then a couple of days later, palpable calm. In fact, one advisor, he said, it was interesting, and then it was fine. And then I actually talked to a couple of clients who just returned from vacation, and they're up 3%. And they missed some of that whipsaw. But, and one advisor said, yeah, I just survived an incredibly intense 2-day recession. It's pretty actually quite revealing and funny. But the commonality were the advisors who just called up and didn't try to be the smartest guy in the room, wanted to be a voice of reason, but led with the question, how are you doing? How's it going? How's this? How's that? How's your daughter? How's your son? You know, just asking questions and reading the room and just going from that feedback. So again, just stirring the pot by being proactive.
The proactivity, I could give you a good example of that, is so many advisors have clients that have been sitting on cash, right? And they're just waiting for that opportunity. If this isn't it, if this isn't the opportunity to call people, to speak to them, like I said, about tangible outcomes, where we look at hyper-specific planning around lifestyle-based outcomes, hyper-specific planning around lifestyle-based outcomes. That is the conversation we had with clients, the day-to-day volatility and fluctuation to address whether it was a 2-day recession or that we have yet to see how deep this goes and where it settles. Regardless of the answer to that, having that proactive reach out that is preferably has some mid-course correction involved in the phone call. Because if you can sit and through those 2 days, whatever the thousands of points down that we were, if through those 2 days, there's no adjustment needed, what kind of volatility do we have to see for there to be an adjustment needed? That's the question in the back of my mind. Do we need to be down 30%? Well, for those advisors that have gotten that value stacking that I was talking about, how do we create more predictability around lifestyle-based outcomes? A lot of folks right now are feeling pretty good about some of those new solutions that they added, a lot of buffered strategies. Maybe you saw the Journal a couple of days ago, big endowment in the Northeast. Everybody knows who they are. Switched to 200-300 million in buffered strategies. That's the mid-course correction that clients are seeking. Show me something of value beyond just, well, the fundamentals are still the way they were before, just a little uncertainty around tariffs, but we'll just wait it out till we see where it all settles. I could do that in an index fund, right?
Yeah. I had one advisor last week. He said, he was kind of kidding around, but then he said, it's different this time. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, what is revealing in my clients based on where they are in their lives? Because I'm getting questions that I didn't get 5 years ago. People asking about alternative investments. And interesting, he goes on to AI and he said, how big is the alternative investment space today? It's $30 trillion or closing in. Clients are now, right? They're asking
I would just add to that. I just heard, and this was such an eye-opener, this is part of that value stacking, again, is looking for those alternatives and solutions that aren't just the average public equity market exposure. What are we doing to provide clients private market access? Why is that important? Well, just because 90% of all companies that generate 100 million or more in revenue are private. 90% of all companies that generate 100 million or more in revenue are private. And what your plan is primarily based on 10%, that just doesn't make sense. And clients are beginning to realize that. What are you doing to give me private market access? What are you doing on the alternative space, the direct indexing space, right? I'm looking for tax alpha via direct indexing. That's more and more people talking about it. I know at First Trust, that's been a side of our business that bringing solutions to clients to address the current needs that they're having has been a a real eye opener and very revealing in volatile markets.
So here's a question for you. What do you think's fueling that? Are clients doing their own research? Are clients talking to friends? Are clients getting input from an accountant or another service provider? Because one advisor last week had a client call up saying, I had a friend who just told me that gold has outperformed the S&P in the last 5 years. Is that right? Now, he was ready. He had a great response. But then I looked today, and Goldman today said that gold could very easily be 4,500 by the end of this year. Advisors, they have to take their future pacing and planning to another level of looking down the road at where all this could go. Another financial advisor had a son, I think a son, I don't think it was a grandson, I think it was a son, who asked the client, or the parent, about Bitcoin. Do we have any Bitcoin? So, of course, the client asks the advisor, like, what do you think? And the advisor does a little search. The crypto blockchain market is a $3 trillion sector. We have to think about what panoramic and all-encompassing planning really looks like now. But what's fueling this? Where's it coming from? It's got to be friends, conversations, research, input from service providers. What are your thoughts there?
Well, if a client's asking you a question about a solution set, an alternative, a tax alpha strategy that is becoming more commonplace for the high net worth or ultra high net worth space, and it has to be one of their peers that mentions it to them and not the advisor, then we're already playing catch up. And it communicates that what we talked about, what do we do in volatile markets? We have to be proactive in our personalized planning, and we have to consider that there's a value stack that goes beyond public equity markets. And waiting for the client to ask about it, boy, that's where we can expose the competition. You know, later, I'm sure we'll probably get into the whole client acquisition and AI-driven kind of marketing formulas that teams are using to drive new high-touch, high-tech type implementation in their strategy of accumulating assets. I would say right now, could you imagine if I'm sitting with, if this is an advisor listening right now, I'm sitting with one of your best clients, or just, having snacks up at the club, and I say to them, hey, I'm curious, when the advisor, your financial folks that you're working with, when they looked at the volatility that we're hitting right now in the market, and they showed you the strategy to hedge out 40% of the downside of that while capturing 80% of the upside, I mean, how much easier does that make you sleep? Man, I would hate for that to be the first time that they heard about that. Or this idea of a lot of us are capturing gains that we've had for a number of years. And it was interesting, proactive trust services where people are looking at what we talk about, that lifestyle-based outcomes, your philanthropic interest in plannings, those assets that exceed the estate deductibility, where now you're looking at 40, 50 million that's going to be in that taxable pool. But the whole time the advisor knew that I had charitable interest with this money and never talked to me about a long-term charitable testamentary trust. Come on. We just don't want to play catch up. And that's one of the reasons we talk a lot about, you mentioned scale earlier, maybe in an earlier conversation you and I had. If we aren't continually growing down our practice, our households, and our holdings so that we can go deeper and wider and be more meaningful with those clients that are best suited for our practice, then, boy, we're going to be in a really tough spot. And I would say the next 15 to 18 months.
Yeah, agreed. And let's hold that thought because I do want to get into that. But back to your point, again, being proactive is to try to draw out unspoken questions, because your point about a client hearing something first from a friend You remember there was an advisor who had a client call up and say, listen, I know this isn't your thing, but do you know anything, or do you know where I can get long-term care? Because we've been doing some research and I know it's not your thing, but you got any thoughts where we can go? And the advisor is saying to himself, like, I've told you 5 times we have long-term care, but he pitched it as a product instead of positioning it as part of the process. And this is the thing. Advisors now are adding a pillar to their process where they're positioning for their clients and having clients feel comfortable about talking about their investments that are outside of the process. Other activities, other investments that at some point could be monetized and then brought into the advisor's process. It's just that future pacing and positioning is so key. And that's the heart and soul of stewardship, ultimately. Okay, so you said
What I would add to that, Duncan, that content plus events equals pipeline. So when you look at a client that would ask that question and say, I know this isn't your thing, it'd sure be nice if you had something on your site, a 2-minute video clip that addressed the 7 life priorities or the 12 wealth management concepts, so that when they do say that, say, well, in fact, that's part of our process. I don't know if you've been to the site. We actually go pretty deep into that. Then it's not you just say, oh, yeah, we do that too.
Yeah.
Right. So have the content in place. You've got 2 minutes. You know, at 2.5, you lose 50% of the people that push play. But you've got 2 minutes in order to capture these different concepts. Maybe it's the 12 wealth management concepts, or you divide up in seven pillars or 7 life priorities, whatever your strategy is. If you followed the advisor playbook, and Blue Square Method, we get pretty involved and detailed in both of those books on what some of that content could be. And then to put an event around that. Events are still working.
No question.
And content plus events equals pipeline. And so keeping that pipeline, what is the one thing you love to say is the best time to dig a well, right? Before you get thirsty. Best time to prepare for the recession is before it happens. You might have just got a window right now. Yeah. If you waited till now to do these things, that you're like, hey, you got lucky that this thing didn't keep going the way that it was, and that we've got a little window before maybe we see more of the same. Take advantage of that window.
Little primer, yeah. And again, little soundbite, only the paranoid survive, right? I mean, that's what risk management's ultimately about. Okay, so you said something about research. I want to pivot here. Everybody, if you haven't already heard, there's a pretty substantial AI white paper for the financial professional that is available. You can go to paretosystems.com and access that if you haven't already done so. But Chris, AI is getting real. We talk about it on a regular basis, and it seems like there's, for some who are adapting, a shift from sort of intrigue to actual getting into the weeds around implementation. So part of what we're trying to do is that signal to noise ratio, like what matters, what's working, what are people actually doing to get a result. I'd love for you to chime in there. I've got a couple of things I'll hit on too.
So, what area of wealth management is AI not going to touch? One of the things that I've been really an advocate of is communicating that wealth management will be given away for free. I think it'll happen in 18 months. People think it'll happen longer. That's where I
say that again. This is profound.
Wealth management, as we know it, will be free in 18 months. It will be advice that's being charged for it. And so if wealth management's free and we charge for advice, instead of now, what do? We give away advice and we charge for wealth management. This is going to flip on its head. And as it does, every single area AI will touch in a meaningful way. In the leadership capacity as a wealth manager for your team. Within leadership, are you using tools like Grain to record your team meetings that are listening for contribution of each team member, that are also taking into account the tone and inflection that you as a leader have with different team members, in providing you real feedback? Is it also engaging, maybe, are you overloading or overworking different team members? It keeps track of the different delegated tasks. This is just a tool for efficiency and leadership. And then there's a whole suite of tools that you can have in the area of client acquisition. You're looking at, Lead, right now, Lead IQ, Lavender, ChatGPT, which you and I use a lot of, is every one of these different capacity tools to reach a new audience with really targeted, specific target to who you're best suited for content, so that you can speak to what? The lifestyle-based outcomes that your process makes more predictable. That's the bottom line. What are we charging for? What do I pay 1% a year for to a financial advisor? I pay 1% a year so I have more predictability around my lifestyle-based outcomes. I get a higher level of predictability by giving 1% to a team than by trying to do it on my own. That's how we need to get, is more and more focused on the advice side rather than the wealth management side. Look, the trust services, huge, but personalized follow-up, that's where we're going to strike a chord that differentiates.
Well, and you mentioned content and thought leadership, subject matter expertise. I mean, the concept of writer's block is gone.
Yeah.
I had a firm that received our white paper on AI and said, look, our people they haven't even really put anything on their phone. They're just not even dabbling yet. Could you try to light a fire? And all they're really allowed to use is Copilot. So I go on to Grok, I think it was, the Twitter X AI version. And I just said, okay, create a presentation on how a financial advisor can use Copilot. 3 seconds. I'm in the red zone. I'm like, this is good. But then I said, this is complex. Dumb it down a little bit, just so I can ease in and not, confuse anybody. It simplified it. And then, so if I have an hour to present, I'll ease in, and then I'll get into the weeds in a little bit more detail. I had another firm ask me if I could do a presentation on leadership, because so many financial advisors who are scaling up are wearing a lot more hats today, HR issues, etc. So I said, okay, create a presentation for me. I did go to chat on this. Create a presentation that I can deliver to financial advisors on leadership, so they can elevate their leadership to their clients, but also their team members who are trying to elevate the client experience. An entire chassis. Now, I'm not going to take it verbatim, but a chassis that inspires me to plug in and load on some of our core stuff from our content. And now I'm in the red zone. So content, amazing. Intellectual property, like this is the challenge I lay down for every advisory team. I say, if what you do and what you know resides solely in your head, it is a skill, and you are transacting your trading time for money. The moment it's documented, digitized, organized, standardized, professionalized, now it's intellectual property. So as you know, in our white paper, there's an entire progression within our prompt sheet. You can build out 80 or 90% of your playbook in 90 days if you just follow that progression. So AI is getting real. There's no question about it.
And everybody's going to be, even those listening to this podcast will feel in different stages of adoption and understanding. And what you can take from that is, if the white paper is a little more involved and you do want something a little more refined, kind of a AI white paper for dummies version, you can drop that into ChatGPT and create an AI white paper for dummies out of the PDF. Everything that you can imagine, any question that you might ask, you got to first think now, almost like it's a post-Google question. This is a partner with you that has access and real data to provide solutions for your
what's
practice.
interesting about that, Chris? A lot of tech people I talk to, I say, what is your ratio between going to AI versus going to and doing a Google search? What's your ratio now? most tech guys say I go to AI first, and if I want validation, then I'll do a Google search just to verify what AI produced for me. But it's changing the utility. It's like going from VHS to beta. Like they're going to a new it's a new habit that's being formed, which is kind of
You
interesting.
can watch it even with your kids, right? We've got college kids, and I mean, do they watch? They don't watch television. You know, they're on their phones all the time. But the thing that I find that they're using their phones for, it's AI. It's not Googling anything anymore. They are going to AI and they're finding real answers, at least stimulating additional thought and questions that
I know an advisor. I know an advisor who's got a lot of clients in their 70s and 80s, and he's saying to them, ask your grandkids how to put chat on your phone and how to use it. You'll have probably the most meaningful 2-hour conversation with your 11-year-old grandkid than you can ever imagine. And they're calling back and saying it's taken our relationship to another level, because now the protege is teaching the mentor, and they feel so proud. Hey, grandpa, let me show you something. And hey, by the way, you like this football team. Let's talk about some of the long-term, like they're going down these paths. It's so invigorating to make that connection.
I had a similar one happen where it was a grandfather who his grandson showed him GPT and showed him how to write poems. And he was writing poems for his grandmother with GPT, and the product of them, the grandmother's crying because the grandson's writing meaningful, personalized poems from the inputs that he gave about the grandmother's life. And the grandfather was just like, this is unbelievable. So it was just interesting to see the meaningful impact in families that it can have.
One of my kids wrote a poem for my wife's a birthday card, and she read it and said, wow, this is good. There's no way you wrote this. It was pretty funny. But he came clean, but it was really good. All he did was tell AI about her and her, what she used to do and where she comes from and what school she went to, and it was pretty good. But yeah, you can have fun with it. But it's at a point of being non-optional in terms of creating content, thought leadership, and intellectual property, and documenting that. And it's an incredible form of forced savings, because I'm a broken record when I say that every investment of effort you make working on your business and turning it into IP becomes intellectual property and drives your enterprise value and your scalability, which is a nice segue.
Have you ever felt like you're alone on a desert island? Alone, with your challenges, and wishing you had a group of successful advisors to share ideas with, solve problems together, and push each other to reach bigger outcomes. Well, you don't have to be alone. Hi, I'm Scott Hamilton, a Pareto coach, and I also lead the mastermind groups for Pareto Systems. Our goal? To help advisors achieve bigger, better futures faster than they could on their own. Through our mastermind format, what we call Collective Genius, we bring together successful advisors to share best practices, insights, and solve problems together. Some of our groups also are focused on specific niches, like divorce or M&A. All groups are led by Pareto coaches who've worked with hundreds of top-tier financial advisors. Ready for more? Visit ParetoMastermind.com for details and to check out our upcoming webinars. That's ParetoMastermind.com. Bigger, better, faster.
Let's talk about scaling up for a second. As you know, there are many advisors who are at a point in their life where they want to simplify. They want the business to serve their life, so they're growing down. And that's actually activating an incredible level of professional scarcity and attracting a higher caliber and more complex client. But there are some that say it's go time, let's scale up. And of course, because of that, now that they're moving completely away from a book of business to an actual business, they're building in this C-suite mentality. I had an advisor last week say to me casually, we're hiring a COO. And he was talking about this. And I stopped him. I said, did you just hear what you said? Because you would have never said that 3 years ago. You were still in the world of book of business and I eat what I kill and production and same store sales and wallet share. You were still chasing. And now you're sounding like a business owner. Like you sound so much more attractive. I can just imagine how a business owner interprets the way you roll now, the way you conduct yourself. So there's a deeper relevance there, but these advisors that are actually running a business like a business in terms of roles, responsibilities, and the whole C-suite dynamic, they are positioning themselves to scale up and grow without the unintended consequence of dilution to the client experience. So I'd love any insight you have there.
I would echo it's delegation and time leverage. We've talked about that for years. It's just now it's no longer optional. If you're finding yourself spending time on top heavy administrative tasks like research and those tasks that flat out just should be outsourced. It's that whole idea of $400 an hour people performing $40 an hour work.
Yeah.
The idea that somehow not being able to let go. I think Dwight Eisenhower said the hardest thing about being a CEO is having a memo come across your desk, knowing you could have written it better, but signing it anyway. Done is better than perfect. Delegate and focus on where really should your time be. I'll tell you a great exercise. This would be fun. If you're an advisor and you're debating whether adopting a new behavior or activity to begin instituting your practice, whether it would make sense for you to do that, do yourself a favor and go to ChatGPT and say, I'm a financial advisor and these are the tasks that I'm currently performing. I'm apprehensive to make any changes leveraging AI in my practice. Where will I sit as a competitive advantage in 3 years? And watch what the output is. If you want to know where the business is going, what it's going to look like 3 years from now without making any changes, you can ask. It'll tell you. But I would suggest being proactive and adopting a strategy of growing down, leveraging, and delegating. And we don't delegate. One of my biggest pet peeves is when one advisor will introduce the other as, hey, this is Mary. When I'm not in, Mary will take care of my clients. And when Mary's not in, I help take care of her clients. So I'm paying for your flexibility. That's kind of what this sounds like to me. And I don't get how redundancies are beneficial to my family's long-term financial outcomes. I don't want to pay for redundancies, and I'm not interested in making your life more flexible. I want from you more predictability about my lifestyle-based outcomes. Now, they're not going to say that. You would hope that they won't. That'll be in the back of their head until they run into someone who does focus on that. And so the competition will elevate. As I mentioned earlier, it will flip on its head. It will be the advisor that understands it, adopts the tools to create the scale, to emphasize the relationship and how they can go deeper and wider with those. That's the next 18 months. It's not going to take 5 years for this to come out.
No way. Yeah, I completely agree. The acceleration is jaw-dropping. It's interesting. If I had $1 for every time I've said to an advisor, like I ask them, I put them on the spot, and it's a trick question. I say, so what do you do? And they literally tell me what they do. And I go, okay, you just described 10,000 people. Tell me now what it does, not just what you do. What does it do? Like, tell me what it does. It's a different answer. And then I ask them, what does a client want? And how does that answer align with what your value does? Like, focus on what people want. Like, what does a client want? They want liberation and order. 1%? You want to be fee worthy? I want liberation to go do my thing. And I just want to know you've got this and things don't fall through the cracks. And your point about how people are positioned, like different people following the same practice, using the same process, means consistency. I'm a client. I want that. I want consistency. So just a little reminder there.
I do. I love what you're talking about there is it provides liberation and order. The advisor that understands what that means to the client, like what does liberation and order mean for you? Are you talking about what it is? Are you talking about 6% returns throughout retirement, or are you talking about at 55 getting the ski chalet in Kelowna? I mean, do you understand what liberation and order feels like and is understood by the client for them personally, or are we still focused on returns?
Well, that brings you back to, the difference between just fixating on commoditized technical ability versus personalized planning that somebody can fully understand. Like, okay, you've got this and you're talking to me. You're not talking to, that's very, very profound. Okay, so let's keep going here. I want to talk about habit 2. Just a reminder, you probably 30 years ago read The 7 Habits. It's timeless. Begin with the end in mind is habit 2. I'm talking to a lot of advisors right now who are starting to think about their end game, their exit strategy. They're a lot more deliberate about enterprise value. I'm talking to advisors who are maybe contemplating a new environment that's in their best interest and their client's best interest. There's a lot of strategic planning going on right now. Where I'm going with this, Chris, is through it all, as I do scenario planning and strategic planning with an advisor, front and center, they don't know this, but I want to definitely, before we end the conversation, I want to put an emphasis on the client's self-care and how they're taking care of themselves in terms of being able to take good care of their clients and take care of their people. I want to hear your inputs on that, but my question, I never get tired of asking this question. I'll say to an advisor as we're getting into it, I'll say, just let's zoom out a little bit for a second. Just paint me a picture. If everything goes perfectly, like if it exceeds your expectations and you literally get yourself into a state of Zen and nirvana, it's just perfect. What does that look like? Like, paint me that picture. I can feel the energy change. And my point here is they start talking about the things that they've deprived themselves from doing. Like there's no saying we are what we lack. They start talking about the things that they're lacking in their life. Travel, quality family time, health and wellness, and so on. I want to make sure there's a dual track being followed. As an advisor is focusing on their end game or their exit strategy or whatever their big picture plan is, I want to make sure it's never coming at their expense. So I don't know if you have any comments on that.
So beginning with the end in mind, I would just add that in volatile markets, volatile markets create fear and they create opportunity. We know that about volatile markets. It will create fear and it will create opportunity. The advisors who lean in with courage, three things. This is what I would have you when it comes to beginning with the end in mind. I want you to lean into volatile markets with 3 things. Courage, the courage to pick up the phone, to make the call in a difficult time. Takes courage. Andrew Jackson said, one man with courage is the majority. Have the courage, pick it up. The second is clarity. Right now, there's uncertainty. Provide me clarity as your client. Courage, clarity, and then the final one, creativity. Courage, clarity, and creativity. That's what we do in volatile markets, where we expose fear and we take advantage of opportunity. Courage is the call. Clarity is the process. Creativity is your competence. If you can look at, as we discussed earlier, what's your alpha tax strategy? right now in volatile markets? Well, direct indexing is that. What is your creative strategy for uncertainty? Buffered strategies are that. I have hedge strategies for that. What's your creativity for complete top headline risk for public markets? Private market access is the creative process there, where 90% of the companies that generate 100 million or more in revenue are private. We're not going to overlook those. So that's where I would look at right now. Volatility creates fear and opportunity. We address that with the 3 C's: courage, clarity, and finally creativity.
Well, that's just a masterclass in communication. And also, I mean, what I get from that is if I'm a client, the value that happens and kicks in the moment I hang up the phone.
Oh,
Because now I'm saying to myself, it's going to be fine. He's got this. I can just go on and do my thing. And when you can activate a sense of rejuvenation and anticipation for the future and not get bogged down, I got to tell you something. We both spend a lot of time in Ubers, right?
yeah.
This is pattern recognition. Whenever I get into an Uber, I immediately say to as I look at the driver, just kind of reading the room, and I can see a lot of them are carrying a pretty heavy load. This is not their prime gig. It's a supplemental. They're trying to keep it all together. And I just ask a question. And generally the question's prompted by whatever ornament's hanging from the mirror. If it's a family picture, if it's something media, I just ask them, like, what is that? We start a conversation. I'm legitimately interested. I can feel the energy shifting. And then at the end, pump hands, have a great day. Thanks for the ride. And I'm a big tipper. And I want to leave a profit. I'm out there making a profit. I want to leave a profit tangibly. But I'm also it's a win-win because I've developed some reputational equity now where I'm actually called now a big tipper. And you know what? I've seen my wait times go from 11 minutes down to 2 minutes. So I'm winning by developing this, but we're all winning. I think that society is going through this palpable shift of rejuvenation and activation of, hey, let's see what we can all become here. I was talking to somebody, we were talking about a lemonade stand. And I said, and long story short, the go-to now is, you see a lemonade stand? I don't know, it transports me back to when I was, trying to bring value as a kid. How much for the lemonade? $2. Yeah, okay. And here, I want to buy the pitcher and I want you to give out free samples to everybody else until that pitcher's empty to see if it'll actually drive some sales. The best $20 you can ever spend. Leaving a profit, rejuvenation, activating just anticipation. I don't know. I think there's a huge energy shift going on right now, and financial advisors have an opportunity to fuel that. I don't know.
No, I think everybody's feeling it. If you're not, it's that saying, you're sitting at the poker table, you're not sure who the it's you. So
It's you.
Here's the thing: if someone's listening to this podcast, they're already that proactive advisor, more than likely. So the ones that would never hear this, I guess we could make fun of. They're going to be the ones losing their best relationships to the advisor that understands the concepts we're discussing.
Okay, so with that, let's talk about the energy around leadership, because you made a great point. I mean, Andrew Jackson. I mean, the whole concept of micromanaging. So it's so undermining, right? Like letting the memo go, even if it's not perfect. Right? It's enabling, it's activating self-motivation. So my point is, many advisors are wearing another significant hat now, which is HR. Not easy right now. There's a lot of friction, and it's in many respects kind of bizarre. But advisors are they're deliberately trying to create culture. I talked to an advisor he kind of scoffed at this idea, but we said, okay, donut Thursdays, charcuterie Thursdays. Yeah, donut Tuesdays, sorry, charcuterie Thursdays. He said, yeah, whatever, $100, okay. It's no big deal, but incrementally, it's becoming a thing where it's creating energy, it's creating culture in the firm. It's led to some charitable activities. It's led to, let's go go-karting, let's go do some things. There's a different energy in the team. And then, of course, attracting talent is a big deal. I talked to an advisor around AI. I said, what questions do you ask when you, okay, he had everything right, job postings, Indeed, and internally, everything was right. But I said, what questions are you asking when you meet candidates? And it was the same stuff everybody else uses. We went into AI and said, let's ask for some really good questions so you can draw out from someone maybe things that they didn't rehearse. Find out who you're actually dealing with here. Like, what was your biggest accomplishment at your former job? And what was your biggest hurdle that you overcame? And how specifically did you deal with that? Like problem solving, like just getting a little bit to your point about creativity around the people you're interacting with. So
I would add to that, Duncan. I remember speaking with, won't mention the firm name, everybody knows who they are, but he was top 25 at major wirehouse and leading a very large team. And he used to work for another advisor when he first got into the business, and was with him for a while. And he said, I could have been with him maybe forever. He said, but I wasn't getting something. And what he wasn't getting was a vision of what it is they were trying to accomplish. It became the monotonous day-to-day activity of just busy work. And it's, what was that? The one story that might have been a Stephen Covey one where he's chopping stone and just having a miserable, day of it. And the other guy is smiling ear to ear and whistling while he's chopping stone. And he asked the first guy, hey, what are you doing? He goes, I'm chopping stone. And he asked the second guy, what are you doing? He goes, I'm building a cathedral. The idea of a vision of what it is that your team, as the leader, that's your responsibility. Have them understand and capture the essence of what it is that we do and how we're serving families and bringing predictability around very volatile and uncertain, sleepless nights that they would otherwise be having. So in these markets here, I had another conversation with a very high net worth individual, owns a professional baseball team or part owner. And what he spoke about was having a town hall with all the people in his group when the market had that little dip last week. He said, just have a town hall, let them know, listen, your job's not at risk. We're excited to have you here. This is where we win. This is where we lean in. And we lean in with, and that's where I got a lot of what I shared with you earlier, a very wise person, very influential person that understood that leadership is about setting a vision of what it is you're accomplishing as a team. He ended up leaving that advisor, starting his own team, and became very focused on that conversation with people all the time. They're bought in. They know that they're building something together.
Well, and I'm sure that environment previous served him very, very well, but he just came to his own conclusions that, okay, this is as far as this is going to go. And now to become the best version of me, it's got to be the next chapter. I've got to think that your model of courage, clarity, and creativity applies to leadership as well, because just the analogy of the rocks and cathedral, that's communication. And I think, habit 5, seek first to understand. Leaders don't try to be popular. They want to have impact on people. They want to have impact on people's lives. And what does everybody on the team want? Self-actualization. So if a leader can foster that environment with good incentives, and there's quantitative incentives, Okay, am I making what I can possibly, the most I can make? Qualitative. Who am I becoming here? What is this contributing to my life? This is
I'll
where,
tell you, a great leadership example for me, and for those of you that are listening that have been to a First Trust event, one of our due diligence trips, you have the opportunity to hear our CEO, Jim Bowen. You talk about an inspirational figure. Selfless, absolutely selfless. He cares about you, the individual, and is passionate about going through time with the advisor, being partners with the advisor and being that resource for them it's inspirational. And I can remember early in my career, I think I've been with the company 28, 29 years, but maybe 10, 15, and opportunities are presenting themselves at competitor firms. And they just didn't understand that it wasn't just the money and substantially more, maybe in the short term to make those moves. But I didn't know what we'd be building over there. I knew what we were building here. And that leadership, what does it breed? It breeds loyalty, fierce loyalty.
yeah. And I've been around the block, and it's not even close. First Trust is the only environment, the biggest advocate for the financial professional, because they understand you're the guardians of self-made wealth, but also the fact that more than ever, managing relationships and managing a business is just important as managing money. And the ability to apply the same level of importance to all three, it's just unrivaled. So I have a tremendous soft spot there, of course. Okay, so let's pivot to one last thing, because you talked about talking to clients with scale events. The power of the feedback loop. For years, we've been talking about number one, keeping your finger on the pulse and making your clients the voice you listen to. I had a mind bender. I'm talking to an advisor and I'm literally saying to myself, oh, I am crushing this. Like, this is so good. And he was like, okay, this is perfect. This is exactly what I'm looking for. And I said, okay, first thing you got to do is you got to follow me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty popular there. And, I went off on my little self-promotion. He goes, yeah, I don't use LinkedIn. And I'm like, I can feel the air coming out of the balloon right now. I'm like, oh, I go, so instead of back, I just said to him, I said, so what do you do? Like, where do you consume information and where do you go for professional development? He goes, I'm on TikTok and Instagram all the time. And there's some funny stuff there, but I get some gold there. Now, I convinced myself years ago that I was going to go down LinkedIn, and LinkedIn serves us well. It's amazing, but I never really gave TikTok or Instagram any real credence. And then I started talking to people. Are you on TikTok? Are you on Instagram? Yeah, I'm on there all the time. I'm like, okay. So I just got to demonstrate to the world that clay is soft. But yeah, it's not my idea. It's coming from them. So it's absolutely essential that you make your clients the voice you listen to, keep your finger on the pulse, and you're constantly looking through their lens, the lens of the prospective client, the lens of the accountant or other strategic partner, the lens of the existing clients. Like, how are you perceived? How are you described? Chris, you and I talked a while back about just automating reviews. We'd get all kinds of great feedback from clients of ours. Oh, wow, Terry's a great coach. Sherry's a great coach. And, oh, wow, they did this and this and this. And it would go to our heads to die. Just dissipate. Now we have an automated process for capturing those reviews, and it's compounding. Like, it's actually becoming very impressive. I would ask every financial professional, automate your ability to capture the energy and goodwill that your clients have for you. Automate that. And if you're in a situation where a client's just over the moon on the phone or in a Zoom meeting talking about how much impact you've had on their life and their family and their goals and so on, just simply ask them, would you mind sharing that with us? It's intellectual property. It's energy. It adds to your sense of purpose and fulfillment. So feel free to chime in on that too.
So many people think they know what their clients are thinking about them or how they feel about their business or the value that they've delivered, but you don't know unless you've asked. And so putting a process in place, and that goes to form that we talk about, always that regular, steady stream of feedback and understanding the current needs of clients. Current is the operable word. People's needs evolve and they change. Having a process to understand the current need of the client would be about creating a feedback loop. And then, obviously, making adjustments to the feedback.
Right.
The current feedback loop, one that I would encourage that we talk a lot about, is make it part of your strategy and tactical meeting with your clients, part of that agenda.
Yeah.
You have to solicit as part of the agenda what it is that they feel is bringing the most value to the table from your team. You want to uncover that, have them vocalize that, and then give them an opportunity to explore on maybe where we could get better. But giving them a specific format in order to do that. I like the fill in the blank question has always been my favorite. People like to fill in blanks. So when you propose it as Mr. or Mrs. Client, I'm curious, how would you fill in the blank to this statement when it comes to what we do for you here at ABC Wealth? Fill in the blank. They're thinking, I got to fill in the blank. What's the fill in the blank? Well, I'm curious, how would you fill in the blank to this when it comes to what we do for you? Gee, it would be nice if you could also help us with blank. They're going to come up with something. And it's probably going to be something that you already do.
Yeah.
So solicit the feedback, make it part of a process. Just the easiest way to adopt that is place it on the agenda. Those aren't optional anymore. You're already adopting those. So just solicit the feedback. And I think with the preface that you added, as part of our process, we strive to make our clients the voices we listen to. Let them know that. We mean that. And even more importantly, our most valued relationships, which we consider you one of them. So they'll appreciate that.
Okay, so I want to tie that in with your earlier issue around just courage, clarity, creativity, being proactive. We ask advisors to have a video of the benefits of your process. Excuse me, we'll edit that. Have an evergreen video that's 2 or 3 minutes long that emphasizes the benefits of your process. This is the mid-course correction. This is the signal to noise ratio. This is something you have on hand for the 80% of the clients who generate 20% of the business when things get volatile. It's your trailer. It talks about what matters and what you can control, and just helps a group of people from a one-to-many perspective just see through the short-term noise and volatility. And that can liberate you. So you're honoring those relationships and liberating you to have the one-to-one conversations with the 20% of the clients who generate 80% of the business. I know advisors, they have this on standby, and it might go into action once a year. And it's sent as an email, just a gentle reminder, and then a little context paragraph in the email, and then the 2 or 3 minute video. Oh, and by the way, feel free to share this with someone if you're speaking to a friend or family member who's maybe a little bit anxious or uncertain about what's going on right now. Video testimonials. Now that those guardrails are in place, we have parameters in place, getting a client to tell your story, to give their perspective on the impact you've had on them or their family, or help them navigate through a difficult time, or achieve this breakthrough and inflection point where they became financially independent and got to go live, some of their, parked dreams and aspirations. This feedback and this form of intellectual property helps with your reputational equity, your advocacy, and let's not forget, it activates just the fact that this is not a job, it's a calling, your sense of purpose. It's a big deal being a financial professional and having 2, 3, 4 generations of clients and a family tree impacted by your value. So just keep all of that in mind. And as always, I'll give you the last word. Anything else on your mind?
No, what's just been on my mind, and that's what we addressed today, was the concept of value stacking. And you look at, and I think in the concept of soliciting that feedback and those testimonials, why wouldn't I value stack the 4 or 5 things that we believe that our team does, that our clients have found of most value, and have a testimonial around those 4 or 5 things? We stack that value in a 2-minute clip out of points of differentiation. Boy, what a great thing to land on the website. Countless stories, ideas, successes that continue to work. At First Trust, we are fortunate to be able to work with folks like you, Duncan, at Pareto Systems, who it's not lip service, that you guys commit, devote, and deliver always for the financial advisor. And so I appreciate our relationship, and everybody that's dialed in. Thank you. Thank you for having us.
And thanks to the leadership at First Trust, because again, it's unrivaled and it just keeps finding another gear. And also look for that AI white paper. Go to paretosystems.com. Any resources you'd like, speak to your wholesaling team at First Trust. And of course, you'll probably cross paths with Chris or Kevin or Jackie or anybody on the team at the Advisor Consulting Group. Thanks very much for everything.
Thank you, Duncan.
Thank you for listening to Always On with Duncan MacPherson, where our objective is to enable professionals to always be working on their business and on themselves. Want to learn more about Duncan and his team? Visit paretosystems.com. Don't forget to click the follow button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the hosts and/or guests and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Pareto Systems. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only.